Welcome to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. I am your host, Sharna Southan. I am an angel mum, a rainbow mum, a pregnancy loss practitioner, and trauma-informed coach. I created the Institute of Healing Through Pregnancy Loss out of my own experience with loss in the hopes to provide understanding and healing, educating people on pregnancy loss, and creating more women or men in trained support roles. In this podcast, I hope to shed light on what I wish I knew in relation to pregnancy loss, opening up the conversation, breaking the stigma, and bringing real-life stories plus guest experts. Thank you for being here with me today, and let's dive into today's episode. Welcome, beautiful souls, to the What I Wish I Knew After Pregnancy Loss podcast. Today, I have with me Hayley Wilds. Hayley is an art therapist, a certified grief professional, and pregnancy loss survivor, devoted to breaking the silence around pregnancy loss and supporting others in their grief. Thank you for joining us, Hayley.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Oh, you're so welcome. Do you want to share a little bit about your story and essentially, what then, and I know through us talking, we'll be able to get to what you've been able to create. So, do you just want to maybe start at the beginning?
Yeah, sure. So I, back in 2017, my husband and I wanted to start our family, and I became pregnant, and it was my first pregnancy. And we were so excited. And looking back, and I always talk about this, I literally had no expectation that anything was going to happen to that pregnancy. And having come from a big Irish Catholic family where babies were plentiful, I just assumed that everything was going to go normally for me too. About 15 weeks along, I started having some concerning symptoms. I ended up going in to get checked through some emergency ultrasound. They let me know that the baby had died, and I had what was called a missed miscarriage. And they estimated that the baby had died a couple weeks before that. So I found out at about 15 weeks. They thought maybe around week 13 the baby had died. It was a horrible day, to say the least. I have a lot of almost vivid trauma memory from that day, where different images throughout the day, because we started in the morning at my doctor, and then I had to go to the local women's hospital for the emergency ultrasound, but we had to wait to find out when our appointment would be. So that whole day, it was just a lot of unknown, a lot of I kind of in my heart knew. I knew for probably a couple days, and I felt like I just didn't want to believe it. But I had to sit in the waiting room at the doctor's, look at all these happy pregnant women with their infants coming in. Then when we were in the waiting room for the ultrasound, just very, very keenly aware of all of the other women in the room. And my heart is breaking, sitting there. My husband is doing his best to comfort me and going through his own pain in that moment too. And when we knew for sure and we left, I really felt blindsided. I really felt like my world crashed, and I did not feel prepared. So that was sort of like the beginning of my story. And now looking back, how many years later, I have such an appreciation for that experience, and not in the way that I would wish it on anybody, but I feel like at every stage of the journey since, my story has evolved, my meaning has evolved, my appreciation and gratitude for everything I experienced has evolved, and it continues to. I think it always will. And so pretty much from that point on, I went back to work right away. I think we took the weekend. I had to have a DNC procedure, and then we went away for the weekend after that to Cleveland, Ohio, which, if I'm from Pittsburgh, so if you know anything about Cleveland and Pittsburgh, we're kind of we make fun of each other. We're cities that don't respect each other in a joking way. And I feel such warm for Cleveland, Ohio now, because that city was where I started to grieve the loss of this baby and find comfort in that process because my husband and I were sitting at a restaurant and a song came on that he really liked. And he said if we ever had a boy, he always wanted to name him Orion. And I was like, well, that's the baby's name. We didn't know the gender at that point. So or the sex, I should say. And I didn't care. I was like, it's Orion, whatever it is. This is too special. And then, I had a couple months where I felt like I was fine. I was like, okay, I moved through this and I'm going to be all right. And then I got, I believe it was just like an email or a text or something about a upcoming baby shower for somebody in my life. And my soul died. I felt so like it crushed me. And I was like, oh my gosh, what's happening? Why am I so upset about this? And it sort of just unearthed all these emotions that I think I've suppressed without meaning to. And so then I started to like feel really active in my grieving. I was like, okay, I clearly need to tend to this. Looking back on it now, I feel a little frustrated with my doctor, feel a little frustrated with the people who supported me, like the providers who supported me, because nobody mentioned grief, nobody suggested therapy, nobody suggested any resources. And I got like a sheet of paper after my procedure that just said, here's your schedule for taking ibuprofen. That was it. So when this happened to me, I was really shook. I didn't know why I was so emotional and I was very irritable. And that's something I hear a lot now from the women I work with, just how irritable they are. I started to make art. I started to journal. And I came to, I don't know how I came across it, but I came to this idea of like creating a tattoo, designing a tattoo for my baby. And then that really was a pivotal moment. And because we named him Orion, I did a constellation tattoo of the Orion constellation. So fast forward a little bit more. I'm a therapist, so I have always worked with people. But I worked with community mental health and did family therapy. And I decided at some point that I was going to start my own practice, but I gave a lot of notice. And in the meantime, got pregnant again. And I waited a while because I didn't want to rush. And I was really worried that I didn't want to like try to patch over what I was experiencing. So we waited as long as felt comfortable and then got pregnant. And I know we were talking about pregnancy after loss. And I have a lot of clients right now. Actually, a couple of them just had their rainbow babies, and one is still pregnant. They all talk about anxiety, like intense anxiety and compartmentalized excitement. I don't know if you can relate to that, but sort of like you don't want to get excited.
I called it reserved happiness because it was like I wanted to be happy. I also was so fearful of everything that was laying ahead of me. So
Yeah,
yeah, I the compartmentalizing happiness. Like, yeah, I just
yeah,
called it reserved happiness. Like
yeah,
I couldn't allow myself to get that attached to
yeah,
buy the baby things. Like we didn't buy car seats and stuff right until right at the very end. I didn't even buy we didn't even set up a baby room. Like I'm like, she'll just sleep
yeah.
with me. It's fine. I'll be
Yeah,
able to
the
watch
kids,
her.
yeah, right. Yeah, and I think certainly the clients I work with have very similar experiences where there was a lot of like delaying the tasks that, in a naive, I say naive, but that sounds so like patronizing, but it's like you don't know what you don't know. And in my first pregnancy, I started my registry like week 6 of the pregnancy. I was so excited. I was like, bring on all the baby stuff. And then with the pregnancy after my loss, it was, we didn't even tell my husband's family about the pregnancy until week 20. But I told my mom because she's my mom. But it was a totally different experience. And I think I was really looking back now as a therapist, I know what I was doing, but at the time I didn't. I was so obsessive about anything that I thought maybe I caused the previous loss. Like I didn't drink coffee. I didn't wear my Fitbit. I didn't put essential oil on my skin. I didn't dye my hair. I mean, all the things that they say maybe don't do, I didn't do any of them. And who knows, like if any of it helped. But I was like obsessively checking too, like, the spotting thing, always watching for spotting. It was like obsessive, compulsive. It really was. So I think that had I had a therapist at that time who understood what I was going through, it would have helped me move through some of those feelings without thinking that I had to control all of that, or even that I had control, because it's really like an illusion, it's so anyway, that was a thing. And then the day my daughter was born, I got induced, and that was rough. And I even remember, like, because I was in labor so long, because they didn't want to wait any longer because of my age. I think I was 35 or 36. So they didn't let me go past my due date, which was like, great, thanks. My daughter wasn't quite ready. But I had a fever and they were worried about her. So they put a heart rate monitor on my belly to watch her heart rate. And I stared at that thing the entire, like, for hours. And my husband was like, you have to stop looking at it. I was like, no, I don't. So even up to that point, I was like fearful. And I know now it was like trauma and traumatic loss that I had. And but when she was born, like I was able to deliver her naturally, thankfully. It was like a half hour away from a C-section. My doctor looked at me. It was my doctor who had done the DNC procedure. She was so great during that experience, like she herself. And she looked at me and she was like, we've come full circle now, haven't we? And I just like bawled. And then when they put her on my chest, I bawled. And I finally think all of the the reserved happiness, as you called it, came flooding out. It was so overwhelming. That experience was wonderful. But then I think a few months later, in the midst of returning to work, a very interesting, complex experience happened where I kind of experienced a resurgence of my grief from the first loss. And I was like, oh my gosh, of course, like, because it's a separate thing. And just because I'm so excited and thrilled to have my rainbow baby, it doesn't mean that I'm not still grieving that first baby. So that was a real lesson. And then fast forward to, I went into therapy for that too, because I just needed that extra support, and thankfully found a great match. And I tell everybody I talk to now about the need for that, because, and especially trying to find somebody who understands, who has lived experience, because it does make a difference. But when I started my practice and I left my agency, it was a very hard decision, but I knew what I wanted to do. I wanted to work with moms, and I wanted to work with people who want to be moms, and moms who had pregnancy loss, and people who want to be moms who had pregnancy loss. And that has become the crux of my clients in my practice. For those who are interested, I use art therapy, and I have found it to be like especially supportive for pregnancy loss grief. I mean, it's great for everything because I'm biased, but as an art therapist, I really value the way that a lot of losses that occur before 20 weeks are kind of unseen. You don't necessarily get to hold your baby. You don't get to necessarily have a funeral or burial. And art gives you the chance to make these things tangible, like how I designed a tattoo, and I can show you. It's right there. I don't know if you can
Oh,
see it.
yeah. Yeah.
It's like
Beautiful.
right here. Thank you. Because it's like this tangible thing now, So going through the process of designing it, and then even since just having created artwork in tribute to my first baby, and I had two more losses after my daughter, and then we had to make the very hard decision to stop. That was a whole grief thing in and of itself. And I'm still in that, like that grief is still present and being worked through. But yeah, I think the reason that I decided to do that with my practice, and then really focus in on the art, is because it's got a dual process at play where you get to like really process your emotional experience in the grieving, and then you can create like tributes and like tangible representations of your baby.
It's beautiful. And I've I've been aware of art therapy too. There was a summit that I created at the very beginning of my coaching journey in this space,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
an art therapist was one of the professionals that I interviewed because I was just like, I'm not good at it. But then I'm like, that's the whole beauty of doing it
Mhm.
as a therapeutic thing. Like, you don't have to be, and I think that's where a lot of people, we can stop ourselves. You're like, oh, but like, what am I going to draw? Like, I don't know how to draw. But I'm like, that's the thing. You don't it doesn't have to look like anything or be anything.
That's right.
It's just this expression of like what is inside of you. And what I
Mhm.
found for me was I ended up drawing a lot of bright colors, and I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh," like, even though it felt so dark and hurt and painful, like, I ended up just naturally
Mhm.
being drawn to brighter colors. And
Neat.
yeah, I was just like, I don't know if there's any scientific thing behind that, but I'm like, it's
Yeah.
just, and then I could, and I again, I don't know how to draw, but it was just this thing that you can create, and like you said, it's this tangible thing that you can use then, and it's not
Yeah.
bottled up inside of you as just, thoughts
Yeah.
or feelings. It's a way of
That's
getting
right.
all of that out, and it's such a
Absolutely.
you can, if you are a good drawer, you can do stuff with it then.
Mhm.
I think it's a beautiful thing that you've been able to create, and also not only just the art therapy side, have that safe space for people to come
Mhm.
into where they will be fully seen and heard. Because I know a lot of women who have
Mhm.
obviously spoken about, therapy and stuff like that, where they don't feel fully seen and heard because the
Mhm.
therapist just doesn't understand what they're going through. So not only
Right.
can you create that, you know, therapeutic, artistic space, it's also a space where they can, if they wanted to talk about it or,
Mhm.
and be fully held, then
Right.
that's that place for them too. One in 4 pregnancies will result in miscarriage. 1 in 8 women will experience infertility. 1 in 100 women will experience recurrent miscarriage. And 1 in 160 births end in stillbirth. Have you been wanting to make a difference in the lives of women or men who have experienced pregnancy loss because you can see so many suffering in silence, but you just don't know how? Collectively, we can change how bereaved parents can access mental, physical, and emotional support after their experience. There is a lot of women with unhealed trauma, and there is a huge gap in the current support system when it comes to bereaved parents' recovery after loss. There are too many women and men suffering in silence. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is a worldwide, one-of-a-kind program that gives you proven methods designed for healthcare professionals, medical staff, midwives, nurses, doulas, birth workers, coaches, and angel parents alike. The Pregnancy Loss Practitioner Certification is bridging that gap. It will give you a proven support structure to follow and education specific to pregnancy loss, created by a loss mum. It is creating more education specifically for loss so that you can enhance your service and become the point of difference. Or you can create the support that you so desperately needed in your healing after loss. This is the next level of growth and expansion you have been searching for. So, does this sound like something that you have been searching for? Let's explore this more together. You can head to the episode show notes where you'll find the program application, or direct message me on Instagram and let's open up the conversation in how you can use this education. You have a gift, and I look forward to supporting you and witnessing you bring your gift to the world, healing and transforming women's lives.
Right. That's such a good point. And it's pretty heartbreaking how many people that I'll do like a free consultation to make sure I'm a good fit for what they want. And during that consultation, I always ask, like, what's your experience with therapy been so far? Some people haven't had any before, but some have had really dismissive therapists, not dismissive in general, but dismissive of their pregnancy loss. And they would say things like, well, at least, and then whatever comes after the phrase at least is not going to be helpful.
No.
But telling them like, oh, but it was only at 8 weeks, or oh, it was, you're young and you can keep trying. And like the good intentions are there, I'm sure, but like we already said, if you don't know personally what it feels like to go through that and have it really impact you, it's not going to be easy for you to help somebody who is going through that. And I think as I started to work with people in my practice, I started to, notice themes, and some of them were like these dismissive remarks, and a lot of them were like dealing with family members who would offer these like unhelpful platitudes when they're grieving, and a lot of discomfort with the grief. Like I have a woman I worked with who she's one of the ones who had a rainbow baby just a few months ago. She was planning her baby shower with all the matriarchs in her family, and she wanted to do a memorial for her first baby that died at the baby shower. She just wanted to have like a nice little thing to honor that baby, like a little candle and a little thing. It was nothing crazy, nothing over the top, according to her, how she described it. And they were really uncomfortable. And she said that the response really surprised her, but she remembered, she's like, yeah, people don't feel like this is valid. And I know in the US, I'm not sure about where you're at, but I know in the US, it is definitely like stigmatized. There's a lot of silence around it. And I feel like having that safe space where someone's going to validate you and sort of give you permission to feel all those feelings that come up. Because I think that's part of what happened to me when I suppressed my initial grief emotion, was because I got this vibe that I just need to keep it moving. I need to move forward and get over this so that I can try again. And I did want to try again, but I also like didn't get the opportunity to really like notice what was going on. And so I started to create these resources for my clients, like little prompts and worksheets and things like that. And I was doing it on Canva. I don't know if you use Canva.
Yeah.
It's Canva. I just kept adding to it. I kept adding pages. And I was like, this is starting to turn into a bit of a book. And so I was like, maybe I just write a book. Maybe I just do that. So that's what I did. And now it's I call it's a book and a guided journal, because there's different sections and each section is about a different facet of pregnancy loss grief. And I have like a few pages of info followed by a bunch of prompts, like art prompts, writing prompts, checklists, all these different things to help people like sort of tap into the different aspects of their grief experience. And you can hop around the book. Like it doesn't have to be this linear process. And the reason I designed it that way was because that's how grief is. I've since gotten a certification in grief work, and I see clients who have other losses, other types of losses, and there's a definite trend of grieving is it's like just this big amorphous blob experience, you know?
Yeah.
So,
I always like, I redesigned the grieving, like it's not even
stages.
stages, yeah, into
Yeah.
like a spiral, because I was like, it's not something that we actually, like, even when you look at the picture, like there's a beginning and an end. And like
Yeah.
there's a line there where it goes, okay, this is the movement. And you're just like, well, okay, yes, it's not a linear line. It's like a roller coaster, but there's still that beginning and end. And I was like,
Right.
it's not like that. So in my
That's
mind, I
right.
redesigned it. It's like, no,
That's so cool.
this is like a natural, like a spiral in its natural way of moving is it moves things up and down like constantly. Like, and if you hit rock bottom again, you're just like, oh, that's
Hmm.
okay. Like, I'm here, and you witness yourself there, but you know that that's not where you stay, because naturally you will come back up. So you
Mm.
learn something there. You might get tools there. You learn an emotion there, you learn something about yourself there, and then
Mhm.
you naturally kind of move back up. And then each time you move up and down that spiral, you learn something about you, about,
Yeah.
how you cope with things and what works and what doesn't. Like, yeah, society just does not know how to, and like you said before, you kind of just, and it might not even be something they say. It could just be that, like you said, it was just that vibe. Like you just like, I just kind of felt like this is what I should do. I should just move forward,
Yeah.
move on, because no one's talking about it, or no one's, acknowledging me or validating me. But,
Yeah.
I remember feeling like I was making it all up. I was like, well, no one's validating any of my grief, any of my
Mhm.
thought processes. I
Yeah.
must be making it all up. Like, I have to be over exaggerating, or there's got to be something wrong with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong. You just need that person, and
Mm.
like, and or like that, your resource to just say, you're not making it up. And
Yeah.
now some things that you can do to help
Mhm.
yourself through that.
That's
And I
right.
love that you don't have it like linear, because it isn't. Like, you could wake up one
Right.
day and be completely feeling okay, and then the next day you can't get out of bed and you're just like, I don't
Mhm.
understand. But also to understand that grief, which you touched on as well, doesn't just hit you in that moment. It can be, a month down the track, 6 months down the track, 6 years down the
Mhm.
track, and it will
Yeah.
coming back. So it's
That's
also
right.
have those tools at the ready, to go, oh, you know
Yeah.
what, like, this is what's happening. Give it
Yeah.
permission to be there, because it's allowed to be there, and then just help yourself through that.
Yeah. Ugh, you're making so many good points. I really appreciate the conversation because I think like first of all the idea that many people are robbed of the very healing social support that happens after a death. People who go through pregnancy loss, that support system doesn't know what to do with it.
No.
And so they're robbed of that as because that is like research shows how healing that can be, how protective that can be against like prolonged grief or complicated grief that doesn't get processed. And that was another reason why I wanted to do this journal because for those people who don't have that built-in support system, they can go to this book and they can have a safe, non-judgmental space to really pour their grief into, to write out how angry they are or make some art because they don't have the words right now, you know? So there's that. And then I really encourage all my clients to be what I think this this guy that I love, this grief specialist, he's a psychologist, I believe. I'm gonna blank on his, but he talks about the tasks of mourning. And he also talks about really actually allowing yourself to feel the pain and the emotions of your loss. And I tell my clients to be active grievers. He talks about that, where you're not necessarily forcing yourself to feel crappy, but you're really just when it rises up, you're letting that wave hit you because every time you feel it, the next time it surfaces and hits you, the less intense it is. And if you push it down every time that wave like rises up, it keeps the intensity present, you know? And I feel that metaphor really works for me and how I think about grief. Like now when I feel it surge, I'm like, okay, wash over me, let's do it. I hate it, it hurts. Who wants to feel pain? Nobody. But if I do let myself do that, first of all, like I recover faster, or if I go do some journaling and get it out, I feel like, okay, I contained it, I put it somewhere. And secondly, the next time that trigger hits or that reminder hits, it just doesn't hurt as much. It's always going to be there though. Like I think another metaphor I really like is a wound. And I think about when you ignore a wound and you don't do anything to take care of it, it will fester and stick around. But if you, take care of it, and treat it, it'll heal over, but it'll always be part of you, and if you poke it, it'll still hurt, but it won't hurt as bad as like this open wound. So anyway, weird metaphors, but I'm a
No,
therapist, so
I often I'm the same. I love metaphors, and I often talk about with my students about the essentially pregnancy loss being like a broken bone. But with a broken
mm,
bone, what we would do is we would go to the doctors, we would get it maybe put in a cast, we would tend to it, we would nurture it, we would do what we needed to do to actually stay off it to let it heal.
yeah,
When we're going through pregnancy loss, it is a wound. It is something that has happened internally to us, but we don't tend to it. It's like that broken bone. You wouldn't get back up and try and function if your legs were broken. So,
yeah,
and internally, there is so much healing that needs to be done so that we can move on and so that we can have these subsequent pregnancies and have our mental health in a really good place and our physical health in a really good place. There's
yeah,
so much internal healing that we need to do, but yet we're not told that we need to do it. We're not told that we need to, even that our body's in postpartum. We don't get told that there
mhm,
is these healing processes and it takes time. We just get told,
right,
go back to work. And especially like yourself, like I lost so my baby died. I had a miscarriage too, which I thought I was about 10 weeks, but it had died at 7. And again, you don't have that physical, okay, people don't know I was pregnant. So you have
mm,
almost that expectation again on top of you that you've got to pick up the pieces. You got to be the worker. You got to be the wife. You got to be like, if you've got existing
mhm,
earthside children, you've got to be the mom. You
mhm,
can't you can't take time. You can't do
yeah,
that because society doesn't see that there's anything for you to be grieving. And you're just like,
right,
well, my body was pregnant. I was pregnant.
mhm,
Like, there is no way that you can trick your body out of that. And you need that healing. You need that validation. You need the space. You need the time to heal. And it's like that broken bone. Like, in my mind, I'm like, you can't just,
yeah,
get up and start moving around. I tried when I actually had a broken bone. I'm like, doesn't work.
yeah,
You're
that's a
in
good
pain.
metaphor. I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good.
But you would do what you were told to do if you had a physical injury.
Yeah,
You would give it the time. And this is a physical wound that we're carrying, but
mm,
you're just like, oh no, that's fine. Just get on with it.
mhm,
And like, yeah,
yeah,
all of those platitudes, I
yeah,
know, I just, yeah. I mean, I feel like our stories are quite similar, in terms
mhm,
of like, I had my loss in 2017. I was 34, I think. I was 35 when I ended up having my rainbow pregnancy, and I was induced as well for my rainbow
yeah,
pregnancy. And they had the heart rate monitor on me, but they kept losing
wow,
her heartbeat. And I was like,
oh,
okay. I freaked out, like obviously for that part, but then it's almost like all of my loss experience and the fears that I had kind of just left me.
mm,
That primal like urge of like, okay, I need to give birth kicked in.
yeah,
It was a very traumatic experience, obviously in my
yeah,
loss and then in my pregnancy after loss as well.
yeah,
And like you said, there is not only do you not get the validation for the loss, you don't get the validation for the trauma that you experience. And you
mhm,
carry that with you as well if you don't get the right support. If you don't get that
right,
person that can see that and go, okay,
yeah,
yes, you experienced trauma. Okay, let's help you through that. Let's help you navigate that. Not only do you have the grief and the emotions
mm,
and the everything that goes along with it, you've also now approached your body's in this survival response.
that's right. Yes, exactly. Yeah, I even am thinking about women I work with now who, you know, like I mentioned, a couple of them have rainbow babies. A couple of them, it's a year plus since their loss that they've been working in therapy with me. And sometimes, we'll be processing something and some reminder will come up and they're flooded with emotion. And it is that trauma response hitting them. And just all of that is stored in the body, like, and literally. in the body for pregnancy loss, And so I definitely see how their work they did in therapy really served them, but it is always with them, And that's why I think breaking the silence, as they say, is so important to me, because I just want people to know, like, if you feel those feelings, they are valid, and tending to that grief is okay and allowed, and in fact recommended, and and it's
Therapist
okay
recommended. Yeah.
that's right. And it's okay to keep experiencing your grief, because some of the women I work with talk about that. They're like, sometimes when the emotion hits me, I like when that happens. It's how I'm remembering my baby. And that's something that I've learned too, is that like through that emotion you feel connection to the loss, and you remember them. So
Yeah. And I liked how you mentioned before as well, like each time you feel it, it's less intense. And when
yeah.
you allow that intensity to leave you, those memories
Hmm.
do become fonder. That each
Yeah,
time you look back, you're like, it's not so painful and it doesn't hurt as much.
right, exactly.
So then you can start to appreciate the memories. You can start to find the joy in them and that connection, which is beautiful.
That's right. Yeah, that's really good. I like that.
Yeah. On that note, would you like to share with everyone your book, what you've created, where they can find you and connect with you?
Yeah, thank you. So I'll show you the book. It's called Creative Healing for Pregnancy Loss. And I don't know if it's backwards or not on
No,
your
it's
end, but
it
okay.
actually, yeah, it's all good.
Okay. Yeah, Creative Healing for Pregnancy Loss. And for more info on it, I have a website, creativehealingforpregnancyloss.com. And then if people want to follow me, I have some freebies on my website too. If you want the first chapter for free, you can go to HayleyWilds.com free chapter. And you can sign up for my email list and it'll send you the first chapter. Or you can just search it on Amazon and buy the book if you want. That's where it is for sale. So yeah, HayleyWilds.com and creativehealingforpregnancyloss.com. And I'm on Instagram as well at Hayley.wilds.ma.lpc. So it's a mouthful, but yeah, that's where they can find me. So I really appreciate your time and giving me the chance to talk to you and share my story with you, and hearing about yours too. It's
Oh,
special. So thank
yeah.
you.
Oh, you're so welcome. And like I said before we jumped on to, like, I love bringing in people like you who not only has it been your experience, but you've been able to create something beautiful from it to help others navigate this time, because we can feel so alone and you don't get this awareness or resources from your medical, like your doctors and the hospital system.
Mm-hmm.
So if obviously they're researching and how I can find more for me, like how more resources, more support, more guidance for pregnancy loss.
Yeah.
And this is where I want them to know that you are available and you are here, and what they've been through, their pain, and
Mm-hmm.
you have something for them.
Yeah.
So no, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story so vulnerably as well. And I love what you've created.
Okay, thank you so much.
That's okay. So I'll pop all of your links in the show notes below. So obviously, as well, if people want to find you, that you're only one click away.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you to all that have listened in. If this episode was valuable to you, I invite you to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode. Thank you for listening in with me today. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, I would absolutely love to hear from you. Take a screenshot of this episode, share it to social media, and tag me at Institute of Healing_PL. I love seeing what is resonating with you right now. If you want to chat further, I invite you to connect with me through Instagram. Head over and follow my Instagram account, send me a DM and let's open the communication. If you want to know more about how you can be the support for others, head to the show notes and fill out the application form for the Pregnancy Loss Practitioner certification. I want to also note here that what I share within the episodes is not medical advice. If you need further support, please consult your doctor. Thank you again. Much love to you. Be gentle with yourself, and I look forward to supporting you on the next episode.